Hello, my name's Ben,
And my name is Josh.
and welcome back to FPL Graduates, and welcome back to another video. We're going to do a deep dive into the premium assets on FPL. Join us as we sort of look into all of those premium assets and the best combination that you guys should potentially go for.
Yeah, we've been getting loads of questions like, should we pick Salah? Should I go without Salah? Should I have De Bruyne? Why is no one talking about De Bruyne? So we're going to uncover that all in this video. So get your cup of tea, whatever you're drinking, and sit back and relax.
So, guys, as we mentioned in the intro, Kevin De Bruyne is one of the guys that we're going to be looking at first. And wow, first of all, look at those fixtures. Bournemouth at home, second game week of the season. If we're not tripling up on Manchester City assets to begin with, what are we doing? But is De Bruyne that guy that we need to go for in Manchester City? Because as we know, there is more than one premium Manchester City player we could go for.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are saying obviously De Bruyne is more reliable, which is understandable given the fact that Haaland obviously hasn't played a minute in the Premier League yet. But if we have a look at De Bruyne's stats from last season, he obviously scored 15 goals, his best goal scoring season in the Premier League so far, achieved from a 5.7 XG. So he massively overachieved on that. And obviously, 5 of those goals came against Wolves towards the back end of the season. So it's one of those things where I personally believe that we aren't going to see that type of goal-scoring form from De Bruyne again, especially now they've got Haaland and Alvarez. Man City are going to play a very different way to how they did last season because they've got 2 strikers now, whereas last season they had no strikers. What's your thoughts on that Man City dynamic, obviously losing Sterling and Jesus? Do you think that's going to change things, how they play?
It's going to have an impact on how they play for sure, because those two were stylistically how City were playing throughout sort of the last few seasons. But for De Bruyne as well, we've got to sort of look at, is he going to be nailed on penalties for a premium? Because usually what we do look for with premiums, there are obviously exceptions. With premiums, we look for players who are guaranteed to be taking penalties, set pieces. And De Bruyne just isn't going to be on well, he's not going to be on penalties. He's maybe on a few free kicks and that sort of thing. And like just said, the 5 goals at the back end of the season. And, in the first half of the season, he wasn't considered as a premium asset at all last year. So it's, again, something we've got to look at. Those stats are inflated just a little bit. I think his assist output will definitely improve this season. But again, he's a player that's a little bit injury prone. Do we expect him to start every single game with the history of injuries that he's got? I'm not too sure personally.
Yeah, one positive there is to have with De Bruyne as well, though, is that he is a bonus point magnet. He achieved the most bonus points in the league last season, which is crazy numbers to be fair. So if he does get some returns, you're most likely going to see the highest bonus given to him. But that is just one of the things. For me personally, I'm staying clear of De Bruyne. I think he's slightly overpriced. I think being the same price as Son is a little bit too much because Son is such a good goal scorer. Whereas De Bruyne, obviously last season he was, but like we said, those numbers are a bit inflated. What's your opinion, Ben? Would you look to consider De Bruyne in your Game Week 1 team?
In my opinion, I think even for premiums, there's better value options out there for a player who is not going to get the most goals out of all the premiums, and is also, in my opinion, not going to get the most assists out of all the premiums, especially on FPL. Remember, guys, you can get assists for sort of winning a foul before a free kick or winning the penalty and that sort of thing as well. So it's worth bearing that in mind. I don't think De Bruyne tops either of those metrics, which is really important for a premium player that you expect to get the goals and assists.
So moving on to our next premium option, it is Harry Kane. 11.5 million is that how he's coming in this season. 17% owned, so a little bit more than De Bruyne. But I think this guy is also going under the radar. Played literally every single game, barring one coming off of the sub last season. And yeah, some pretty good stats to back up. Probably underperformed last season, would you say, Ben?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's been some sort of stigma around Harry Kane that he always starts slow at the start of the season, but I don't anticipate this is going to be the case again. It's been a long time since Harry Kane has had a bit of a rest, a full pre-season, and is ready to go. So I anticipate that he's going to be ready to go. And there's a big discrepancy between those premium forwards at the moment. I think Kane is massively under-owned by everyone, including sort of myself and you, Josh, that we sort of haven't considered him too much, even though the fixtures on paper look absolutely fantastic.
Yes, I think Spurs in general are getting overlooked because of City and Liverpool's great fixtures, and obviously they're great assets that we all want to triple up on, and they're not cheap either. So fitting in one of these big Spurs boys, like in a three premium draft, you do lack the depth in the rest of your squad. So that's one thing to take in mind. Harry Kane, since Conte has taken over, is literally first in almost every important metric in the league, in terms of his output going forward. So Conte's made a big impact on that Spurs team. They've recruited quite well over this summer already. Perisic, Bissouma, Jed Spence has been agreed as we are recording this. So some really big signings in areas that they really needed improving. So I think that Spurs team is only going to go strength to strength. What's your thoughts on Spurs? Are they going to improve next season? Do you think Kane's numbers will improve?
I definitely think Spurs as a whole has improved massively, and I think Conte will get the best out of them this season. We know what he's like in second season. He is fantastic, but whether he improves Harry Kane's numbers from last season, it's difficult to gauge because obviously the goals could be spread a little bit more evenly around that team. Last season is very much reliant on just those main two players, Kane and Son. So we could see a little bit more spread in terms of the goal contributions, but I don't anticipate sort of too much of a drop-off. I think Kane can sort of continue that form. And, he's chasing down goal records as well. Let's not forget that. He's trying to break records left, right and centre. So he's got all the motivation he needs to be a great asset for the next season.
Yeah, I think one more thing to consider with Harry Kane is obviously the arrival of Richarlison. I think his arrival will definitely not necessarily impact them too much, but bring down Son and Kane's minutes, which is probably a good thing over the course of the season. Obviously, you've got Champions League to play this season as well. So that's one thing to bear in mind, is that maybe there might be the odd case of getting subbed off early, especially with the 5-sub rule, that sort of thing. I don't think we'll see the heights of the minutes that we've seen with Harry Kane and Son this season.
Okay, so next up, we've got Erling Haaland. He is currently the most owned player in the game at a ridiculous 64%. So that is a lot higher than Harry Kane, and probably for good reason as well. If we look at his opening fixtures, in his first 5 fixtures, they've got Bournemouth at home, Crystal Palace at home, and Nottingham Forest at home. 3 almost perfect fixtures for Manchester City and Erling Haaland. And we all know what City are like when they play at home. They're ruthless and relentless. Could we see that happen again with Erling Haaland getting in the goals?
Yeah, I think for me personally, I think it's hard to see him failing in that City team. Like, it's such a good, well-oiled system. I just don't see Guardiola failing with such a big talent. But you are stepping into the world of unknown. No one knows if Erling Haaland's going to bang in goals for Man City, and that is probably the biggest factor that people are considering when maybe not choosing him or choosing De Bruyne over him. But for me, the ownership is just crazy. 64% of people owning him is just so many that it's almost hard to go without him. Like, he's more owned than Mo Salah, who literally for the past 5 seasons has been an FPL legend. So for me, I'm probably going to have him in my Game Week 1 team out of pure fear, let alone his ability. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, let's look at it last season as well. Like Salah at 64%, that was probably halfway through the season when he was banging in the goals left, right, and centre already. So the fact that he's already 64% owned, I anticipate if he gets off to a good start, that could easily be 80 or 85%, which is crazy. And it's going to be another one of them cases where, everyone's going to captain him as well to get any sort of gain. So for me, I don't think you can go without him. 21 starts, 22 goals. Yes, he hasn't started every game because he's had a couple of injuries here and there. But once again, a full preseason under his belt. We'll get some more information through the Community Shield as well. That's a big thing. Just sort of make sure you tune into that, see how Haaland plays, if he plays. Because, City, they'll play probably, hopefully, their strongest team in that Community Shield game. So we'll be able to gain a lot more information about Haaland and sort of what he's about and what he's capable of as well.
So moving on to the penultimate asset in this video, it's going to be Heung-min Son. Obviously, I touched on him a little bit talking about Harry Kane. It's hard not to when you've got such a good dynamic duo. Last season, joint Golden Boot winner. He had a fantastic season. 23 goals, 7 assists. He always overperforms his XG. almost take that as an anomaly now, because Son's finishing is world class. And again, Spurs fixtures are really good to start the season. They do like facing Chelsea as well, so you could maybe even say that that's not necessarily a red fixture. What's your thoughts on Son, Ben? Because 12 million, he obviously had quite a big price hike. Is this the season that he's now amongst the premiums, isn't he, compared to being that just underneath? So is it the season to own Son?
It's a really difficult one because there's so many good premiums to fit in from teams that have shown a lot sort of more form and consistency over the last 3 or 4 seasons. So it's really difficult to sort of justify it. But I think if you could own sort of 3 premiums and get away with like the rest of the team being good, I think he would be that 3rd premium that you'd go for. He's an elite finisher, can finish from both feet. In the Conte system as well, it's just fantastic. It's just really difficult to fit him in at the moment. And I think those 26% of FPL managers will see a lot of gain in their rank potentially from owning Heung-min Son, especially, we know what he did last season against Southampton. Could it happen again? Quite possibly. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, and obviously 26% owned is quite highly owned as well for an asset. Like that's no mean feat. Just because Haaland is at 60% don't mean that it's the case for everyone. But yeah, Son, I've tried to fit him in amongst Salah and Haaland, but I think it does just detriment your team too much, especially at the start of this season. And it's really disappointing because Spurs have some nice fixtures to attack. So it is going to be a case of maybe trying to get maybe like a Kulusevski in and trying to cover that Spurs bandwagon that we saw last season, but it just wasn't possible. So yeah, it's very difficult, and I might have to have a more tinkering to try and get Heung-min Son in my team.
Okay, so the final asset that we're going to be covering in today's video, well, who else would it be? It's Mohamed Salah of Liverpool. As we can see here, again, the fixtures are phenomenal. Fulham away, Crystal Palace at home, Man United away, which I would argue should be a green fixture. Also, Bournemouth at home and Newcastle at home. I mean, you couldn't ask for some better opening fixtures for Mo. And I feel like I'm harping on a bit about it, but it's a full pre-season for Mo Salah. Who knows what he can do. And even sort of in his first pre-season game against Manchester United, he looked dangerous when he was on the ball and that sort of thing. So I'd be intrigued, Josh. Is that 58% ownership justified, or is he slightly under-owned?
I think you've got to say he is under-owned. People who are going without Mo Salah are taking probably the biggest risk, more of a risk than going without Haaland, because we know Mo Salah for the last 5 years is an over 200-point scorer. I think last season I almost captained him for half the amount of game weeks in a season. He's just reliable, he's consistent. A lot of people saying he tailed off towards the end of this last season. Well, his expected data was a lot better towards the end of last season compared to the start of the season. So it's just one of those balancing acts. I think, Fulham away, he's captain straight away. I just don't see a reason to go without him. And if you are, it's going to be just hide behind your sofa when Liverpool play Fulham at Craven Cottage.
Yeah, I mean, why would you go without him is the real question. And like Josh said, he was performing at the same level, statistically speaking, for pretty much the whole season, which just goes to show how consistent he has been over the last few years for Liverpool. And, I can't fathom a single reason why you would go without him. I mean, even at 13.5 million, you'd probably look to get him in. I don't know how high you'd go before you'd even consider sort of not going with him, because he's just been that good. And this season could see a lot of unknowns with so many transfers, so many signings, so many potential sort of position changes and system changes to various teams at the top of the table. And one consistent has remained, and that is Liverpool and Mohamed Salah. They've brought in a few faces, but they've kept that system. They've brought in a couple of players, but Salah's only going to benefit from all of that.
Yeah, 100%. I think Mo Salah, like I said, you could even see on that fixture ticket, he's arguably captain for 5 game weeks out of 5. If you go without Haaland, he definitely would be your captain for those game weeks. So he's definitely in both of our teams. He should be in yours if you're going to be serious about taking on the season too, because going without him is just such a big risk considering how consistent he's shown over those 5 seasons now. He's been absolutely phenomenal.
So that rounds off our video on premiums and our thoughts and feelings about them. Let us know what you thought in the comments. Do you think that we missed a point with some of those players? Do you think, you know, you should go for a different premium compared to what we're going for? For us, I think it's probably Salah and Haaland as those two premiums. Let us know. Are those the right premiums to go for? And yeah, as per usual, make sure to leave a like rating. Follow us on all of our socials. And as per usual, I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
later.